Welcome to Breit Guide, where we simplify Medicare. I'm your host, Megan, with Breitenfeldt Group. If you are looking for clarity and confidence when it comes to Medicare, you're in the right place. This is Breit Guide, and let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Breit Guide Podcast. I am your host, Megan, and I have a guest today, Alex from Breitenfeldt Group, coming back for the second time.
It's round two.
So I didn't scare him off. He was on a few episodes ago. And both Alex and I are on a team here at Breitenfeldt Group, and we kind of travel throughout Minnesota, and we speak at seminars and kind of give broad overviews of Medicare to people who are, looking at that option. And so one question, some questions that we get more often these days is, we have many people who are turning 65 but are going to continue to work, or they have a spouse that's continuing to work. And so it kind of poses the question of, if I'm Medicare eligible, but I also have this other option, what are my options? What does this look like? And so we're going to deep dive into that a little bit further today. But also, if you're like, I don't know, I'm not going to continue to work, but I am needing Medicare, you can still stay with us till the end, because we also are going to come at you with a non-Medicare tidbit. I don't know. This is what we do. We talk to you about Medicare and then some random thing. And Alex and I both have cats. We just found out. I thought it was a cat, but we both have cats. So if you are a cat lover and you deal with a litter box.
Oof, the double-edged sword
right,
of having cats.
Cat life, right? So stick with us. We're going to come at you with some fun tidbits with cats and litter boxes and all that. But circling back to this common question here, if someone is eligible for Medicare and still has active group employer health insurance, do they need to go on Medicare? Can they keep their health insurance?
Right. Yeah. Very common question. Mm-hmm. Very common scenario where an individual is facing being both eligible for Medicare health insurance, but yet also they have the option of employer health insurance as well. So then the question is, can they keep one versus the other? Do you have to go one way or another way? So I'd say when we look at this, oftentimes it's from the stance of, it's a great scenario because somebody truly does have two options available to them, where then it can come down to a simple comparison. What are the cost and benefits of the one health insurance? What are the cost and benefits of Medicare? Yeah. What are the cost and benefits of staying with the employer health plan? And then that individual can decide for themselves, do they go, again, one way or another?
Yeah.
And then another common question is, does it have to be through my own employment?
Right.
Can it be through someone else's employment? And generally, yes, if you are eligible for a health insurance plan through an employer, as long as somebody is actively working, they're an active employee, you can usually keep that coverage beyond 65, and then again, just compare it to Medicare.
Yeah. So we always say, you kind of have a unique situation, and you have the option.
You have the option is a big one.
Either route, really.
Right.
So
yeah, you usually don't have to leave that employer plan if you're going to be eligible for Medicare. Yeah. You can look at going either way.
Yeah. So that's kind of answers that. Now, when you kind of dive a little bit into this active group health insurance, you may hear the rule of 20.
Right.
And so that's also a common question, what's this rule of 20 that people can kind of bring up?
Yeah, so the rule of 20, I think, and again, all this is just kind of a general look, a general overview of this topic. But this rule of 20, when somebody's eligible for Medicare, and we're looking at this from age 65 and older, when everybody's eligible for Medicare, but there's this rule of 20. And simply put, it's if there's more than 20 employees eligible for the health insurance from the employer, that employer plan remains primary, meaning an individual likely would not need any other portion of Medicare for that employer plan to remain, the primary payer. Now, if there's fewer than 20 employees eligible for the coverage, rules can be different. And sometimes Medicare can be required to be the primary payer. Somebody would have to have, their original Medicare A and B along with that employer plan for the coverage, to remain active and
Sure.
covering all the hospital and medical portion.
Okay. All right. So if we kind of go into, so you hear about also COBRA, that you'll hear that with employer health insurance. What is COBRA? And then if your employment ends and you have COBRA as an option, what does that look like prior to 65
Right.
and then after
Right.
65?
Yeah, so like you said, like what is COBRA? COBRA is usually available when employment ends. So after active employment ends, you can have a continuation of the benefits you had through your employer, the health benefits you had through your employer. You can have it through a program called COBRA. So if somebody's employment ends pre-65 and they look at going on COBRA, typically what we see, individuals are looking to transition fully to Medicare when they are eligible at 65, because COBRA can be expensive. Usually you're paying the full premium of COBRA and you have, whatever deductible was under that plan. And when we do a comparison to Medicare, again, we're looking at, the cost somebody would pay per month and what the benefits are. But yeah, I would say most people are looking to transition to Medicare at 65 and leave that COBRA option.
Okay.
In coordination of benefits, it can become a very gray area. That's probably a full video in itself. Now, what if somebody ends employment after 65?
Right.
If employment ends after 65, again, COBRA would still be an option. And again, at that point, we typically see most people wanting to transition, to Medicare fully, not take that COBRA option, because again, it can be a kind of a further conversation, and we want to take a look at things closer as far as how would COBRA operate with Medicare after 65, and what are the costs and how are the coordination of benefits going to play out. So I would say when an individual is eligible for Medicare, they're looking to go the Medicare route and not necessarily look at COBRA in many situations.
Sure. And there are very few situations where, they'll choose COBRA.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what we're here for, to help people look at their options, whether it's one route versus another.
How about the situation of a former employer offering coverage to retirees? So if you're, beyond that 65 point Medicare, and they're offering coverage to retirees, what does that look like? Yeah,
another common scenario in this realm of employer health insurance and Medicare, and what are people's options. So sometimes a former employer, like you said, can offer continuation of health benefits even after retirement. So they'll offer, like, the group of retirees from that employer, different health insurance options. Typically with those group retiree plans, you have to have other parts of Medicare to go along with it. The group retiree plan kind of acts as the supplemental coverage when somebody goes on Medicare. Not always the case, but people do have that option available to them. And again, we look at the costs and the benefits between that group retiree plan and maybe an individual plan that's available to everybody on Medicare in their state and their region in which they live.
Yeah, and I think it all kind of circles back to, we our expertise is in Medicare. I mean, we deal with Medicare, and our goal is always for people to know what they have and why. So whether that's staying with an employer, whether that's going on a COBRA plan, whether that's a retiree plan, is just for you to know what you have and why, because it is so individualized. And it's, people come at you with different, opinions and ideas and stuff like that. And so, whether you have these options of these different routes, it can get complex and complicated, and we try to help simplify that for you.
Yeah, no, I think the moral of the story is, today is, if you know that you have multiple options available to you for health insurance when you are eligible for Medicare, again, whether that's an active employer plan, whether you had, about COBRA benefits, or whether you had a retiree plan, it's always good to first compare your options, compare the coverage, compare the costs, talk with somebody about what those options are and how that plays out into the future and what your enrollment options are. And again, like you said, that's what we do at Breitenfeldt Group probably every day. Yeah,
we do. We have a whole team that, like I said, it's very common now. We're seeing that that people are working past 65, that they have these two options. Is it going to be Medicare? Is it going to be employer coverage? And just sitting down and saying, here's my benefits, here's what I'm looking at, doctoring, prescriptions and stuff, here's what I'm needing out of a plan, and to see what the most suitable option is.
Yes.
And so,
because every situation
is so different. And even, when we talk about wanting to simplify the situation or Medicare, it is so different, and everyone has different scenarios. And so it is a value that we bring here at Breitenfeldt Group. And like I said, our team does this all the time. It's more and more. We see that more and more because, again, more and more people are working past 65. But even speaking at these seminars, we almost end all our seminars and they're like, hey, I want to compare this option to know what I have and why, and if I'm choosing the right route that's going to be most suitable for me.
Right.
Yes. So, Alex, is there anything else that you kind of want to add to that? Or
that topic, it can be so broad and such a can of worms that we could go in every direction. But I think, again, like I said, that's kind of the moral of the story is if you're eligible for Medicare, but you also have the option of active employer health insurance, and the group of employees is over 20 at the employer, you truly do have the option of remaining with your employer health plan, or again looking at the benefits and the costs to maybe continue to work but go with Medicare health insurance coverage instead. So that can shake out in a variety of ways, and I think that's the point we wanted to make today.
Wraps it up. Absolutely. So
okay. What about these cats?
Yeah, let's get on to the cats.
I just had cats on my
That was enough, because we don't want you falling asleep during this podcast episode. So, okay, so we recently moved. My family and I recently moved. We had an outdoor cat that we had to make indoor because we transitioned to like 3 different places before we could get to our farmhouse. And so Alex has an indoor cat.
I have 2 indoor cats.
I don't know why I keep thinking this one. Actually, if you follow us on TikTok, one of his cats made a debut. I'm going to give a shameless plug because we also just got on TikTok. And one of his cats made a debut
he
in
did.
the snow.
He did.
And it was a trooper. Right. Yeah.
But I think my only win in the cat world, because now it's my wife and daughters who are more into the cats than I am, but I am the one that takes care of, kind of the other side of cat life, the less desirable portion, which is the litter box. The litter box. So my hack, this life hack into the cat world is I was finding that most store-bought litter boxes were way too small. They were way too small.
Or
it was
cats
messy.
Are overfed, but whatever.
Yeah, it was just messy and too small and whatever else, right?
Okay.
So then I was looking at, like the Rubbermaid or like the big plastic totes at your local big box store, right?
Okay, yeah.
So I was looking at the biggest one you can find,
so
deepest bin you can find.
All right.
Right, with a lid on it, and I cut a hole on the end of that big rubber bin.
Okay.
Cut a hole in the end of it where the cover can go on. They can scratch around and kick up litter as much as they want, and there's a cover on it. They have room to kind of maneuver around inside that big plastic tote bin. And they can do their business, do whatever they do in there. And then, I just pop that lid off of that and clean the litter box from there. But no mess on the floor. Whatever they do in there stays in there.
Yeah, okay, so do you think litter matters? Like, do you have a certain type of litter since you're the
we've tried some crazy litters. There's like ground up acorn litter and like paper or whatever else.
I have a friend that she gets where you can just dump it in their toilet, scoop it and dump it. Nice. So it's like I don't know, septic safe.
I would say we just go with one of the brand name litters, and I'm not too particular anymore. But I bet in the cat world people say it does matter.
I would think so too, especially if you have multiple cats.
Right.
Our cat is now back outside, so we transitioned her to outside. Now she's in farm life, in all the buildings and stuff.
The world is her litter box.
The world is her litter box. And we're like, now we had to worry about the litter box, and I was like, wow, that's a really great idea. I've never heard of, but makes sense because you're right. It is small, and we have a very well-fed cat, so she is not starving by any means.
Sure.
But now it's. Yeah, she has the world outside, and every woodshed and barn has her litter box. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
if someone needs to
just get the biggest plastic tote, biggest, deepest, longest one you can get, and cut a hole in the end of it.
I love it. I would probably even stick a little smelly thing in there. Maybe.
Sure.
Just, so they can.
Right. Make it homey.
Yeah. Maybe a picture, a little wreath in there. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for joining us today,
Megan.
Alex. I appreciate you coming on again. I hope we get to see you back again sometime. And as always, thank you for following us. We come at you pretty real and raw here. All things Medicare, a little bit of randomness along the way. If you like what you're seeing, make sure you're subscribing to us. Follow us on Facebook under Breitenfeldt Group. And again, now we're on TikTok. So we're kind of everywhere, but I hope you can enjoy a little bit and learn a lot of it along the way.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. And remember, you're not navigating Medicare alone. At Breitenfeldt Group, our entire team is here to support you, answer your questions, and help you feel confident in every Medicare decision you make. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode of Breit Guide. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.